What's that? Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
I'd like to call to order the November 9th, 2021 regular meeting of the Nelson County Board of Supervisors. Please stand for a moment of silence.
Attorney, if I may ask, who we remember Johnny Ponton, ex-board member that just passed away?
You did pass.
Yeah. Mr. Rutherford, can you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, for making note of Mr. Ponton's passing, and our condolences to the family, and we share in their grief, and looking forward to celebrating his passing. First today we have public comments. The guidelines for public comments are posted out where the sign-up sheet was. I'm going to assume everybody got a chance to see them. I've got 3 people signed up. At the end of having those 3 people speak, it'll be open for others to speak if they want. Limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Christian Barker.
Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I am here to just make a public comment about the.
Can you give your address and?
Oh, yes, sure. Sorry, Christian Barker, Central District, 720 Laurelwood, in Roseland. I wanted to make a comment about the last meeting, and unfortunately I was out of town for that. I couldn't be here, about the decision to proceed with Motorola for the radio purchase. And while I'm not here today to try to assuage you from that decision, I do need to correct the public record. There was commentary inserted into the Kenwood Viking radios. And in that commentary, there were 7 comments about deficiencies with the Kenwood Viking radios. All 7 of those points that were listed were inaccurate and misleading. And I don't mind to compete with Motorola, who has a good product, but I don't like to compete with a stain of inaccuracy in the decision making. And so that's why I'm here. And so also absent from that commentary were the benefits of the Kenwood Viking radios. Some of those benefits are the fact that that radio has been approved by the Department of Homeland Security and is listed on their website as being compatible with your system. Not listed in that commentary was the fact that we offered 5-year warranties at no extra cost to the county. Not listed in that commentary was the fact that these radios meet the same ruggedization standard and emergence standard as the radios that you are looking at, Mil Standard 810 testing. And finally, not listed in that was the unique feature of these radios, which allows the county to own the licenses in those radios perpetually. So if a radio is destroyed or damaged, you don't have to pay for the whole replacement cost. You just have to buy the hardware and the features transfer to the new radios. So again, I'm not here to change your mind about a decision that was made last month. I apologize I wasn't here. But I think that you should be aware that your information probably should be better vetted as it's presented for you for decision making. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence Hernandez, because you're speaking for the Fleetwood Community Center, you can have 5 minutes.
Actually, only me 3.
Okay.
Good afternoon, I'm Florence Hernandez, and I'm the president of Fleetwood Community Center. Our community has spoken. We want to save Fleetwood. The building has fallen into disrepair since its closure due to COVID-19. We're planning new fundraising events and listing community members to contribute to the upkeep of the grounds and maintenance, and are applying for grants to improve the grounds and fields for community recreational use. And it's working. In the past couple of months, we have participated in all 15 shows of Oklahoma with a bake sale, participated as a vendor at Silver Creek Seaman's Apple Butter Festivals, and hosted the inaugural Dicey Cruising Car Show and Dice Run, as well as our fall trail ride. We wrote a recreational grant application to the Nelson County Community Fund for $30,000 to rebuild the basketball court and install a free 9-hole par 3 disc golf course. We received $10,000 with a 1-to-1 grant match up to another $10,000. We were given a year to raise the funds, and with the help of over 100 volunteers, 24 local sponsors, and countless donors, we've done it in just 8 weeks. After generating community interest, our next goal is to repair the building itself. We have just learned that we have an anonymous benefactor who is interested in sponsoring a master plan to help us gauge the scope and process of restoration, but we need your help. We're seeking a donation to help us start a campaign for raising funds to replace the roof. We would like to request $50,000 at this time. The Nelson County Community Fund match format generated so much community involvement and excitement that we would like to ask you to offer the same format. This will help us reach $100,000 in total over the next year to begin working on the roof replacement. We would like to publicly thank you and Nelson County for your support on Facebook and on our website. Thank you for providing Wi-Fi in our area so that we have the ability to do just that. Together, we can do it. Thank you in advance for your contribution to our amazing community.
Thank you. Jennifer Norwood.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jennifer Norwood. I live at 4439 Stagebridge Road in Shipment. Rockfish Ranch LLC is not hiding their purely commercial plans for their property at Quarter Lane in Shipment, in the middle of a residential agricultural neighborhood. The developer described his vision in the Nelson County Times last week as a resort and entertainment destination modeled after a Napa Valley, California property. In marketing, the developer shares a dream of fitting as many people as you want at events. Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, the neighborhood, we all understand that the corporation's plans are not an appropriate use. The corporation fully understands that as well, which is why they've chosen to avoid proper review of their plans by claiming the structures they want to build are by right. By right privileges allow Nelson County citizens some relief from permitting as they evolve the use of their agricultural property. They were not created for out-of-town developers to avoid proper review of commercial projects. The county gets to decide what is by right, not the developer. The planning office and county legal counsel provide guidance to you, the elected board of supervisors, who interpret that guidance in order to set policy that serves the best interests of the citizens of Nelson County. By failing to take a stand on this egregious attempt to subvert county bylaws, the Board of Supervisors affirms this developer's exploitation of a potential loophole, a precedent that many others will eagerly follow. Without a citizen of Nelson County in residence and a division plan, how can the corporation claim by right division rights for the number of dwellings they intend to build? Those rights were created to guide land division in order to discourage unapproved subdivisions. How is a cluster of 25 permanent dwellings proposed for this site, not a subdivision. If the number of dwellings was calculated based on the number allowed through the division rights bylaws, then the development must comply with the entirety of the ordinances. A division plan must be required, detailing independent lots with independent infrastructure. Cherry picking which parts of bylaws that work for a developer while ignoring other requirements shouldn't be allowed. The Board of Supervisors must demand transparency and honesty, especially from out-of-county developers who are buying agricultural property for commercial use. You need to take action now. There's no waiting for your intended updates to county bylaws, or Nelson County will continue its slide towards adult Disneyland. Developers will clear the hillsides, slapping up by-right vacation homes as fast as they can. Event-driven tourism has provided little economic benefit to the county and no real jobs. Alcohol Alley, more wedding venues per capita than Las Vegas, and now a coming avalanche of vacation homes will not attract young families to this special event, or this special place, quite the opposite. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of those who have signed up prior to the meeting. Would anyone else like to speak during public comments? Okay, I will close the public comment period. Before we go on with the rest of the agenda, I wanted to make mention of a change under section 5, where the Fleetwood Community Center is letter C. We're going to move that up to letter A so that we can deal with that before some of the things that are likely to take a lot more time. So with that, move to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, assuming that there's nothing that needs to be pulled, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, then we'll take a vote.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Parr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Next, we have Mr. Blunt with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission Regional Legislative Program.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. David Blunt, Director of Legislative Services for TJPC. Here this afternoon to the annual right, I guess, presenting the Regional Legislative Program for your consideration and hopefully approval. You do have a memo in your packet that lists the top 3 legislative priorities. We'll briefly speak to those and a few other items. First priority, support for recovering communities, followed by budgets and funding. And then third priority being broadband. These are the same priorities that we have for 2021. You'll recall that we kind of revamped the program last year, did some slimming down and focusing on a shorter list of top priorities. There are some language changes to these priorities I would like to point out very briefly. In the recovering communities position, some amendments to that, new language to speak to maximizing the use of federal and state support for the benefits of Virginia residents. This time last year, there was not really a clear indication of all the funds that might be available at both the federal and state levels as a result of the pandemic. So this speaks more specifically to that funding. Under budgets and funding, largely the same position as before, there is some new language that includes support for the inclusion of school bus drivers in the SOQ funding formula. I know that's been a discussion in many of the localities, not only in this region, but across the state, and also for providing state funding for mental health services and programs in schools. And then finally, the broadband position, just a few changes there, some language added to emphasize the cooperative work that's going on among internet service providers, and also some language to stress the affordability of internet service. Following the priorities, the legislative positions section focuses on some of the most critical recommendations and positions in other areas of current interest and concern. Again, referring to the materials in your packet, there is a listing of those items that have been amended in this draft before you. Again, just to highlight a few of those, in the Health and Human Services section, putting some additional emphasis on community-based services and some language that's been added to address census pressures at state
Can we
hospitals.
stop for a second till this lady's finished over here? Can't care about one business at a time.
Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, reviewing just a couple of the items in the legislative positions section under Health and Human Services, some new language to address census pressures at state hospitals so that facilities are able to receive TDO admissions in a timelier manner, and that particularly in some of the rural counties, that's been an issue with law enforcement having to take folks to faraway facilities. That ties them up for extended periods of time, takes them away from their regular duties and patrol within the county. Two things I wanted to point out, finally, in the general government position. One is to strengthen the position on state funding for elections and election administration. I see that later on your agenda, you have an item on redistricting, and certainly with the delay in census numbers coming out this year, possibility of additional elections both at the state and local levels. We just don't know. Wanted to include some additional language there. We've also always had a priority position on election administration. It's been an area where the state has continued to shortchange the localities that carry out 90% of the work on elections. And then finally, we've had a position for a number of years about flexibility for localities when they're awarding salary increases to state-supported positions. We've added a similar statement to really give just some more emphasis to that as it relates to comp board positions. Put that in the public safety position, as well as for the comp board to support realistic levels of staffing of comp board positions. So, quick and dirty overview of some of the highlights. Glad to discuss any items that I've mentioned or anything in the program. And again, asking for you all to give your endorsement of it this afternoon.
Okay. Anyone have questions or comments for Mr. Brown?
Thank you, David.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there, we need to vote on this. Oh, yeah, okay. R 2021-6. Mr. Chairman, I move that we endorse the legislative program, R 2021-60, as presented.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Chairman.
David.
Okay, the next presentation is on the Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail renovation and capacity study. Okay, and we will pass on that and move on to the next item, which is the Firefly proposal. Anyone here to speak to this?
Did not get the memo? Yeah, we told them to be here, didn't we?
They're gonna be here.
They're gonna be here too.
I think it was projected between 2:45 and 3 to get to that, so.
I see.
Okay, well, when these people arrive, we can incorporate that back into the agenda.
Amanda, if you, probably be good if you could ask our new lady to send them a memo.
I will, they're coming, I know they
Okay,
are.
great.
Okay, that brings us to the VDOT report.
He's always ready.
Thank you, Chairman. We don't have a whole lot to report. We doing a final mowing on 29 and 4 lane. So that should be completed pretty shortly. I did check on the traffic counts the special counts we took on 151. They should be available soon. I don't have an exact date, but our traffic engineer said they would he was expecting to get them next week, so. Whether that holds true or not. As far as the signage for the Tyrone overpass, I haven't really gotten any additional recommendations from our traffic engineers. They reviewed it twice, they did not have any further comments, but I'm not completely through with that yet, so we'll dig into that some more. I don't know if the potholes were filled at River Road at the end of Drum Mill, that was sent to our area headquarters. They had not responded back to me. I think that's what it's on. At 8 Hour Road, we have done 2 studies on 8 Hour Road for extending the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. They were done within the last 6 years. And I have not sent that back up because I don't think anything's changed enough to warrant another speed study. I don't see where there's enough physical change, trip generations, residential density, to warrant another change, another study. So I know that's not.
We're not asking for another study, we're just asking to reduce it to about 35.
Okay, I thought the request was to extend to 25.
Well, I think if we just do the whole thing, 35 would make a lot more sense than anything.
That's possible. The other thing is to have some signage about the school bus stop,
Okay.
which is
What
one
was
of the problems.
what was the address on that? Because I think I was kind of
It's at the intersection of Lakeland and,
intersection of Lakeland. Okay, I got that. So really, see if we can establish a 35 beyond the 25.
Well, I went through the other day and I tried to run 35 and it's very, very little through that you can run 35. So I think if you, it needs to be in their minds.
I mean, you got to, the geometry, alignment of the road pretty much controls the speed. So,
well, it does except the, except for the drivers. When you're trying to get from point A to point B.
But if you've got a posted sign, it means more than just.
Yeah, I agree.
And doing the 35 where there's no signs, leaving the 25
I
alone.
mean, we put up a lot of, we put advisory speed, curb warning signs and advisory speed plates up to many of those curves. It used to be, prior to these speeds, there were very few 25-mile-per-hour maximum safe speed signs. We put up a bunch of those when we did that last study. They were.
Well, they are up, and it would have really helped
But
if
if
they
you're
would have
not-
taken care of the problem.
If they're not white,
A sign doesn't take care of the problem.
if they're not white, they don't pay a whole lot
If
of
they're
attention.
not enforcement or.
Your other is a warning.
Regulatory signs. Then that has to be enforced, but, I think that's everything from last month. Y'all have anything for me today?
Mr. Martin? Mr. Harvey?
You think?
Okay.
Just talked about that bush, so we're good.
We'll get it.
Mr. Park?
How are things going down in Woods Mill on 29?
Right.
I talked to our bridge people today. We are hoping if the weather stays fair, we can open that bridge back up the first week in December. Hopefully we'll have the bridge finished in the guardrail. There's a lot of guardrail work down there. It's going to be accomplished. That is our target, is to have it road open, unrestricted by the first week in December. It will be a 2-day closure next spring when we do the epoxy overlay, but they will just be day closures. And that will, and then, well, the road will still remain, bridge will be open, but will be restricted for 2 days. So but that's coming next year when the weather gets better. Yeah. So it's coming to the end.
Good. Yeah, that's a mess.
It's not a good situation. I don't know, just not what you do. I mean, the only other option, and I suggested that, you know, the best thing would have been was to close Route 6 River Road to through traffic. And that would have probably not, the safest thing to do would have been to done that, but I don't think that could have happened.
Well, one of the upsides to that situation is that it has really limited the amount of truck traffic on Route 6, which is something that I've had 2 people in the last couple of weeks contact me about. They're not looking forward to having the construction completed on the bridge because they know that it'll be open season on Route 6 again.
Well, I'll read your email and the restrictions letter. You know, I don't know, obviously it's a enforcement issue. I mean, some of those trucks may have permits from DMV, to be overlaid. Probably majority of them do not. So I don't know if that's any help to you or not.
Yeah.
The DMV would be the ones that issue those exceptions.
One of the requests was just to find out if any options exist for some kind of remediation on Route 6. I don't know the possible things that you can do. I just know that people come up with suggestions and I don't have any point of reference in terms of saying if we can do them or not.
Yeah, I don't have a real good answer for that right now. I don't know, I mean, obviously, it could be a truck restriction. But that's not one the VDOT could put in. It would be something the county would have to initiate. But I don't know, if that's the right answer or not. That would be a hardship.
You can't prove the hardship. There's no truck accidents over there.
Not been a hardship for the trucker.
Yeah, well, they gonna have a hardship, but
Yeah.
I mean, the safety is not with the truckers. Then the ones that are long shouldn't be on it because they have a lot of trouble getting that on 151. But I mean, they actually, I've seen a lot of times where they actually slow the traffic that by running 55.
I mean, it just depends on, you know, I don't know how much of an issue it is. I mean, obviously, the ones that are not legal on that road, it's an enforcement issue.
And you're still not gonna get them off because some of them have to come through to make deliveries on 6 and 151.
That's true.
My gas comes in that way every time.
But typically, those vehicles would get a permit from DMV to come through there.
I just think if they monitored better and get the longer ones off. I mean, that's the ones that they know they're not supposed to, because they're 8.5 foot wide. Now with the 103 or, no, they're bigger than that. The long trucks,
Right.
yeah.
Mr. Reed, might I make a comment about that?
Not at this moment. We had public comments earlier. This is discussion.
I mean, we can put some more thought into it, and, you know, it's, as far as from a VDOT standpoint, I don't know, other than checking our signage to make sure that it is clear and conveys the right message. I don't really know what VDOT can do, but we'll certainly check our signage. In fact, we did a little improvement on our signage. I think when we had the landslide, the rock slide up there, we found some errors in that signage. I don't think that sign has been upgraded, so I will follow up on that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Oh, sorry.
I'm not done.
Sorry. Sorry.
I don't want to have a conversation right now about it, but I want you to make a note and you and I can talk about it later. But I'm trying to understand the intersection of Claypool Road and Cow Hollow Road and Patrick Henry Highway 151 and the stop sign mess that we've got going on there. So maybe you can help me understand the logic behind that 15, 20-foot stretch that has a stop sign.
There's no pavement markers there, and really to fix that, you would need some pavement markings and to reduce the signage. It's
Traffic coming off of 151 is going a lot faster than anybody coming down Claypool or Cow Hollow. Traffic from 151 should be able to roll through there without a stop. People coming off of Claypool or Cow Hollow should have to stop. That makes a lot more sense. But right now, you come rolling off 151, take a right onto Claypool, you've got a stop sign closer than for me to Steve. And if there's a couple of people coming, someone's gonna have to stop in 151 if there's somebody in front of you turning right there. So it just seems a little awkward. And that's not the way it's always been. That stop sign has not always been, not the one right there.
I thought it'd been like that. I don't know.
For a long time. All they need to do is cut off that one section and right in front of where the store was.
Yeah.
And make them all come
Right.
straight and make a 90.
That's kind of just something for us to talk about.
Let me take a look.
Yeah, take a look at it. And then, has what's the speed limit in front of the Roads and Rescue Squad? That section through there, wasn't that 45?
45.
It's still 45? Okay. All right.
Okay, I think we're done.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me just make note, if someone wants to make a public comment, there's a public comment session at the 7 o'clock session tonight. So, okay, or you can submit your comments in writing.
I'll just let Dave.
Great. Yeah, or you can find. Has anyone arrived from the regional jail? Okay, good. Then we can go on with the regional jail renovation and capacity study presentation.
Superintendent Martin Coomer, Colonel Coomer's here from the Regional Jail Authority. And then Tony Bell from Mosley Architects, who's working with the Regional Jail on a study pertaining to renovation of the original jail facility. Martin?
Thank you, Hans, here today. Steve, thanks for the invitation. Amanda, you're going to get us up. If y'all don't mind, well, I mean, set them up with a start. We're here today to discuss the renovation of the regional jail in Charlottesville. It was built in 1974, the original structure. It's had several additions since then, but our renovation that we're talking about today will focus mainly on the 1974 original jail. And the way we got to this point was over the last several years, we've had some large items in the jail, mechanicals, electrical, flooring, roofing, some major issues that have come up that we looked to the board to address. And it was at that time, we had so many issues, we decided to do this all in one fell swoop as opposed to piecemeal it year after year and kind of tackle all of the issues. It was at that time the board voted to reach out to those, the architects to come in and do a needs and planning study. I'll quickly describe the two of those. One determines the future needs of the jail as far as bed space, how many beds do we anticipate we'll need in the future? Do we have enough to meet that need? If not, how many do we need? And then the other is what do we actually need inside the facility right now? Programming space, recreation space, more office space, major mechanicals, roofing, all those types of things. So there's two studies we're conducting right now simultaneously. So tell me if, let's see, would you want? No. Oh, does this work? Okay, good, thank you.
So we've already introduced ourselves, so we don't need to go through that again. kind of gone through that?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, our current capacity, our rated capacity is 329. We've been as high as 600 over the last 25 years. We're currently at one of our lowest jail population during the last 25 years. When I left this afternoon, we had 320 people physically in custody, we had another 50 to 60 people out in the electronic incarceration program. Tony Gilmore. And here, Tony did one motion to talk about the schedule.
Okay. And the real purpose of our meeting here today is to answer any questions you may have. Obviously, you may be very familiar with the existing facility, what it provides, the average daily population over the last several years. But as far as moving things forward, that's what we're really here to talk about today. So in terms of the community-based corrections plan needs assessment and the planning study, as the superintendent said, those are two different exercises that we're providing for the regional jail authority right now. The needs assessment identifies just that, the needs. How many beds are anticipated to be needed over the next 15 years? And then the second part of that is the planning study. And that gives a solution for meeting those needs. Now, we may need no additional beds. As a matter of fact, we've had community engagement meetings. We've had meetings with the Board of Supervisors of Albemarle County, the City Council of Charlottesville, and there's a pretty unanimous push not to add any beds, right? To provide alternatives to incarceration. We'll be looking at all that as we move things forward. And we also want your input today if you have any to offer. But in terms of a schedule, the community-based corrections plan and the planning study are both turned in by December 31st of this year. And that's a hard and fast deadline. That deadline will not move. And then after that, the Board of Local and Regional Jails, the Board of Corrections begin reviewing that study. Okay? Now, these studies are required by the Board of Corrections for two reasons. Okay? The first of which is to make sure you follow the jail standards with whatever improvements you plan to make. And that may be adding beds, that may not be adding beds, but whatever additions or improvements you plan to make to your facility, the Department of Corrections and the Board of Corrections want to review that to make sure it's in keeping with their standards. The second one is, from a financial standpoint, the reimbursement from the state. So if you do any improvements to your facility, the Commonwealth of Virginia will pay for those up to 25%, as long as it's an improvement. If you replace a roof, a membrane roof, with another membrane roof, nothing. If you replace a camera, a black and white camera, with an IP addressable camera, that would enable the superintendent to see it from his desk and all of his staff to see it from whatever location. And maybe that camera is also now color and a pan tilt zoom camera. The Department of Corrections in the Commonwealth of Virginia will reimburse that 25%. Okay? Another important aspect is if you add beds, if you add rated capacity to your facility, that'll get you more comp board funding. And that's another reason why you submit these two documents, the needs assessment and the planning study, to the Board of Corrections and the Board of Local and Regional Jails for their review. So they begin to review these documents, okay? In the meantime, the authority submits a resolution that they are behind the planning study that's been submitted. Whatever proposed renovations, expansions are pushed forward, the Board of Corrections is expecting a resolution supporting the same. They will pass judgment and approve the needs assessment on or about May 2022, and then they will approve the CBCP planning study July, August 2022. So that's the first step in the approval process. It then goes on to the Treasury Board to approve the bonds for any reimbursement, and then it's submitted to the Department of Planning and Budget. It will receive the governor's approval for funding and inclusion in the budget bill on or about December 1st, and then it will receive legislative approval June of 2023. So these are all triggered by submitting this community-based corrections plan and needs assessment by December of this year, and you find out June of 2023 whether or not you're approved for the funding. What happens after that? If you're moving as fast as you possibly can, June of 2023 might be when you want to move forward with your actual project. So you could put out an RFP for AE services, architectural engineering services. And if you advance anytime before June of 2023, you're obviously doing so at risk because you don't know if the legislature, if the General Assembly has supported that project with its funding, with its 25%. Obviously, you can do that, but once you reach June of 2023, you know they're standing behind you with that money. If you started around June, you'd be complete with the design development phase of the project on or about November 2023. And then we go through the construction documents phase. That's the last phase of 3 design phases: schematic design, design development, construction documents. That completion would be about March of 2024. You'd advertise for bids in May of 2024, receive bids at the end of that same month. You'd negotiate a construction contract in August of 2024, and then move forward with the project. And we're just assuming right now that that project would take roughly 14 months to construct. And being as you're renovating a occupied and operating detention facility, it's gonna have to be done in phases, okay? Unlike a courthouse or a school, there are no turning off the lights and going home at the end of the day at the regional jail. So we can't say everyone come back in 6 months when we're done with this renovation. We're gonna have to move the detainees around the facility while we renovate portions, change a little bit of the operating procedure while we renovate other portions, and all of that will have to be phased work. So about 14 months of construction phase, we'd be done with that in October of 25, and then November of 2025 would be totally done. And all that's obviously contingent upon the phases that we established for the project and how we move forward with it. This is as fast as we can move, okay? Can we move slower? Of course. And you've got 3 years after the DOC approves your project to move it forward. After that, they say, come back to us with another ask. Any questions about the schedule? Steve, if I'm going too slow, just wave your hand and we'll move faster, okay? So we've had some community engagement sessions. I don't know if you participated in any of those. All of them were online. The first one was actually in person, but we had very few attendees at that one, Superintendent, as I recall. But we had fairly good participation at the others. And good engagement, good discussion. And we've recorded all those, and those are available online if you want to see them in their entirety. But these were some of the takeaways, okay? Improving the facility for both the visitors and the detainees, but also for the staff. We've got folks who work there 24/7, 365, and improving the facilities for them is important as well. Because if they have a good environment, they're delivering good services to the detainees, and obviously that benefits the detainees who are the citizens here from our community. So I won't read through all these. The superintendent's already touched on some of them. We've got failing systems in this 1975 portion of the jail. They've really received no substantial renovation or improvement, in almost 50 years. So, HVAC systems, plumbing systems, electrical systems, all those need to be improved in this 1975 portion. We need more program space. So when the jail was originally constructed back in 1975, it met the jail standards for that period. And the jail mentality at that time was a little bit different than it is today, right? Today, we're more about reducing recidivism, providing program space, providing learning space, okay? Putting people on the right track that once they get out of the facility, they're not coming back. So today's standards require program space and recreation space as part of the jail standards. We'll look to achieve those and meet those jail standards. And again, if you're in line with the standard, you're in line for reimbursement, okay? Building interior, more visitation areas, resource room, library, improve the toilet facilities, improve visitor locker system, removing the bars. Some of the day rooms, that's where the inmates are the actual cells are, still have bar grading. Bar grading is not incorporated in today's detention facilities throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. Solid walls, glass clad polycarbonate, that's the standard. Bar grade presents obviously a safety concern, but it also creates a aesthetic concern, an environmental concern. We'll talk more about that in just a second. So trauma-informed design, have we heard this term before? What trauma-informed design is? Trauma-informed design acknowledges and assumes that individuals being served are more likely than not to have a history of trauma in their lives. Something that may have caused them to commit a crime and wind up in the detention facility. And trauma-informed design provides an environment that reduces the likelihood of exacerbating that trauma-informed symptoms, okay? Very similar to PTSD, right? So what are some things we can do to implement trauma-informed design? Well, one thing is to begin to give the detainees a regular daily cycle. And there's opportunities for this, and obviously a lot of it depends on the capabilities of the jail and the jail staff in terms of promoting and moving this forward. But it also has to do with facilities. You know, if you don't have the facilities to do programs, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to implement them. You know, if you don't have a classroom to teach in, it's hard to teach a class. But allowing the detainees to replicate daily life patterns. So if you have trustees, for example, who can leave the pod, the day room, if you will, and go to an area of the jail and actually perform daily work functions, that improves their life quality, okay? Rather than sitting in the same day room 24/7, 365. Also providing ample space for recreation. And this may include going outside, be able to look up and see the sky. We're not talking about compromising the security of the facility, okay? But we are talking about being outside and being exposed to sunlight, being exposed to fresh air. Natural light is very important for us as human beings. So the more natural light we can implement into these facilities, and it's actually a requirement of the jail standards, a minimum amount of that natural light to come into the day room and a minimum amount of natural light to come into the actual cells of the detention facility. We talked a lot about HVAC. You know, HVAC is heating, ventilation, air conditioning, bringing in fresh air into the facilities. What you see on the right, okay, rooftop unit, some PV solar panels. Don't know if that'd be something we would be getting into on this project, but you see the opportunity for bringing fresh air into the facility. What you see on the left is one of the existing fan coil units in one of the day rooms. Very, very limited fresh air intake, okay? Everyone's familiar with window shakers. You know, the old window units you used to have in your house. Probably don't have them anymore, maybe you do. These fan coil units are one step above what we refer to as the window shakers. Providing space in the facility with different program sizes, different opportunities for interaction between the detainees and the staff. So you see the upper right will be what we call maybe a large size meeting room program space. Bottom right, average size. Bottom left, small for one-on-one. And you see on the wall there some video visitation monitors. Obviously, the face-to-face visitation is greatly reduced in today's environment. Number one, for COVID. Number two, it involves moving of the detainees throughout the facility. The superintendent and his staff have implemented a step even beyond this, which is a tablet-based visitation system where they can interact with their loved ones through a tablet and don't even have to go to these wall-mounted units. So again, technology in progress. We want to provide sufficient space and resources for detainees to focus on their own mental health and provide humane segregation spaces. Okay, everyone know what segregation is? We have different kinds of segregation. We have segregation just because of administrative purposes. We have segregation because of medical purposes. And we don't have adequate facilities inside the regional jail to do that today. It's also using colors and patterns that are virtually appealing and calming, you know. And these are typically cooler patterns. What do I mean by that? I mean the blues and the greens and the grays and not the yellows and the reds. And also having pictures or views to nature has been shown to provide positive healthy outcomes for people living in indoor environments. So let's look at a specific example. So the image there on the top is the current day room layout in many of the pods at the regional jail. Let's see if I can work this. Yep. So what you see here, this is bar grading, okay? And what it enables it to do is the superintendent and staff can go down this portion to view all portions of the day room, okay? Because the way the day room is configured, you've got some blind spots if you're standing in this hallway, if someone's sitting in this corner, okay? But the bar grading prevents direct contact with these windows. It reduces the size of the day room. You know, it's reduced in size in terms of circulation for those detainees. And what we're proposing doing is removing that bar grading to give more square footage to the detainees, more access to that natural daylight, which you see here, but also improving the sight lines to eliminate those blind spots so that you don't have to go into the day room in order to see all the areas of the occupied area. Also improving the plumbing fixtures, doing some renovation on that, and improving accessibility. Currently, we have no accessible day rooms in the minimum security areas of the jail. So we've talked about removing the bar grade. We've talked about replacing the original mechanical electrical systems in 1975. Item number 3, removing the original louver style windows, that is, with have bars over them, and replacing them with glass clad polycarbonate, providing more programming and recreation space, replacing toilets and showers with more efficient, better quality fixtures. What does that mean? Less maintenance costs. Less time spent working on toilet, more time spent working on with detainees. Provide more purpose-built space. Obviously, none of the day room space or the cells have been reprogrammed. And once a cell, always a cell, for all intents and purposes. But many of the other rooms in the detention facility have been repurposed because they had to be. We didn't have the spaces as they were originally built. So we've had to repurpose, change the name on the door. What was X now becomes Y. And it wasn't built for that purpose. So they're making the best they can. We're going to provide some more purpose-built space so that things can operate as they should be. And then lastly, provide some mental health and segregation housing that you don't currently have. And lastly, looking at maybe providing a new front door. So when you come to the facility, you start you off on a good first note. So with that, I ask if you have any questions. Steve, did I cover everything? Yeah.
Anyone have any questions?
Nope.
Where do we go from here?
So we move forward with the superintendent and his staff in terms of developing the design, while we're also looking at the needs assessment. And it's important to say that, you know, even if the needs assessment anticipates an increase in population, it doesn't necessarily always dictate into an increased rate of capacity. What do I mean by that? Well, we've talked with numerous stakeholders for the regional jail. Commonwealth's attorneys. We haven't talked to the Nelson County Commonwealth attorney yet, I'll add, and we still plan to do that. But there are many different alternatives to incarceration. One of them is what's referred to as a day reporting center, where the detainees would go home every night and then come back to this day reporting center during the day, okay? And that would be their life. Well, if you don't have space for a day reporting center, you can't implement one. So although we may not add any rated capacity, one of the improvements to the facility may be creation of a day reporting center to enable those citizens who meet the criteria to then go and do that.
I thought what they normally do is reverse of that.
What's that?
that they
Spend the night at jail?
jail and then go out and work and stuff during the day.
And that's a different program. That is called work release or workforce. Supervisor.
Makes more sense than the other.
And all those are possibilities. Once again, I'm not the judge or jury. And as the superintendent will attest, the regional jail doesn't make the call on who ends up on the sidewalk in front of their doors to come in. Those decisions are made by somebody else. But we've always got to have a place for them. So, well, I guess my message, Supervisor, was, just because we may see an increase in population, it doesn't always necessarily mean an increase in rated capacity need. Does that make sense? Because like you said, it could be workforce, work release programs, and those other kinds of alternatives.
Do they still do that?
Oh, yeah. They have not done it during COVID. They've turned it way back up.
This is just a whole work release program, but during COVID, like Tony said, we've kind of scaled that back. We now went to home electronic incarceration. So guys, they live at home, they work. So it's either or.
When do y'all plan on bringing it back?
As soon as we get through this pandemic, it won't go away. We will always have the work release program. But the HEI program, home electronic incarceration, has been proven to be very successful so far. It's actually reduced our operating costs quite significantly to a savings both in Nelson County and City of Charlotte County. So it's an effective program, but work release was being implemented.
Thank you.
And what superintendent did while scaling it back, that's pretty universal throughout the Commonwealth. And the main reason is they didn't want detainees going out in the community working and then bringing COVID back to the facility. But it's a very important program throughout the Commonwealth in terms of reducing recidivism. So to answer your question, Chairman, we work with the regional jail. We develop a planning study. We submit at the end of the year. It begins review. We review it as well. And, we answer questions the DOC has. They bless it. And we continue moving through the process.
And so we're welcome to communicate with the board as much as Steve requests. We're here anytime that Steve thinks we need to be here. We have to come back and talk to you.
Okay.
We have. Also like to offer you anytime anybody wants to come for a tour, reach out to me or Steve. We'll be happy to arrange that for you one-on-one, two-on-one. I can do a 30-minute dime tour or 2 hours, whatever you decide you have time for. Happy to do so.
Anyone have questions or comments before we let you go?
I have heard from people who I respect their opinion that your jail is among the most humane in the state of Virginia.
I
And
appreciate that. Thank you.
I thought you would appreciate that.
Well, my board gives me resources to make that happen, but thank you very much for taking us through. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the presentation.
Sir, thank you all very much.
Do I need to do anything?
Somebody else is going to want that.
Okay. Come do that.
Do we have our Firefly representative here? We do. Okay.
Good
Mr. Wood.
Sorry, I missed my chance.
You got penalized for being late.
I see that. Yeah. That's when you're going by in the food line, there's nobody in line, and you think there's one more thing I need. You slip down, get the loaf of bread, you come back, and there's 7 people. So I'm Gary Wood, CEO at Central Virginia Electric Co-op and Firefly. And I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come in today. Let me start by congratulating the 3 of you who ran successful campaigns. Glad to see you back for 4 years. I hope you're all glad to be back. So, with that, let me give you a little quick update on our fiber build and talk to you about a potential opportunity to accelerate the build in the rest of the county this year that you can consider, particularly with the ARPA funds that you have. The fiber build we have is going well. We have completed now all of the substation lines out of Martin Store, Midway, Colleen, Gladstone, and Wintergreen. We've still got a few condominiums up at Wintergreen we're connecting, but the rest of those, all of that's taken care of.
The CARES projects are all complete except for, the Shipman area. We had the first CARES project that was on the Livingston side of the tracks, and we ran into rock down there. When we ran into rock, we had to go to AEP and build overhead. And just to give you an example, last year when I talked about this, I talked about underground being much quicker to start. We notified AEP back in March, that we needed to get started, talked to them about some things in January and February, started in March. We are building that today on fiber. It took AEP a while to get their engineering done, then to do their make-ready work. Then we have to wait for all of the other attachers to move their stuff up and down, and make it clear for our fiber to go up. And that's being built today. It will be finished this year, but that piece is under construction. So at year end, we'll have 8,600 locations in the county that'll have fiber availability, gigabit speed, and that's about 78% of total locations in the county. Next year, early in the year, we will finish up the Piney River substation. We're actually putting a hut at Massey's Mill, communications hut, that'll cover the CBC members up there. And then the Schuyler substation, that adds another 1,100 locations as part of that build out on CBC. Last December, you made a commitment and an agreement with us to build out the fiber throughout the county by 2024. That agreement's in place. Construction has been started on the 3 areas that we asked for funding for last year. That's in Arrington, Shipman, on the other side of the tracks, and in Schuyler. AEP has completed their make-ready engineering work, and they are starting make-ready construction in Arrington this month. They may already have been down there. We have another call with them on Thursday. We do have Thursday calls every other week, and they anticipate starting soon down there. They have to complete their work and get out of the way so that then the fiber can be completed. And we have told them we need to finish that by the first quarter next year. So we're trying to push them along, but those projects are underway. The projects have been coordinated so that we're not slowing down CBEC at all with any of this other work we're doing. Got extra crews that have come in. We've the CARES projects are mostly underground. We don't use as much underground on the rest of the projects. So there are ways that we're trying to prevent any impact on the schedule of CBEC members as part of building these other projects. Here's what the rest of that proposal last year did. There were 11 other small projects with about 1,000 passings, $4.5 million total investment. We had planned to coordinate that with AEP. They are going to do some work where they upgrade a couple of their power lines in the county. And by spreading this out a little bit, we could do our work after they do upgrades. That lets us not have to pay for as many poles to change out. And keeps the cost down, and that's what was built into this plan to finish everything by 2024. Here's the opportunity we have. If the county's interested and funding's available, we can build everything by next year in the county. It means we have to pay extra in those AEP areas where they would be doing work over the next couple of years, because they're not going to do that work. We're going to have to go in then and change out the old poles and pay for that as part of our project. That adds cost. So it's, there's the total cost is $1,380,000. It's 92 total miles of construction. We can complete it all so that the fiber is up and lit by next December. That leaves everything, or covers everything in the county except for there's about 30 homes on Shenandoah Valley Electric Co-op up near Love, up on above Three Ridges. And we'll get those, but we won't get those next year. And then Dominion up at Afton has about 100 or so homes, and that will be built as part of our agreement with Dominion but Dominion won't be able to do their work until they get approval from the State Corporation Commission, and there's some timing things, so that's probably gonna be early 2023 as well. But we can finish all of the AEP locations, other than those 150 or so, that are the Dominion and Shenandoah Valley pieces at the top of Appleton and Three Bridges.
Is that up at the very top?
It actually starts, about halfway up and then goes, most of it's up at the very top. Yeah, that's where it really is.
I know down in Appleton, they've already got stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we have everything, CDC goes up to, up past the post office, but the very top is Dominion. So, here's a list. It's probably too small for you to see, but, this is the list of the projects, and our estimate per project, how many miles we have to build in the project, and how many accounts we pass. I have a note at the bottom, don't worry about the numerical order. This is the order that I put them in last year, but if we build next year, we're gonna build wherever we can get in the earliest and get the, where we have fiber already lit and can build in order to make sure we get them all done during the year. And then I've got some pictures in here, the footprint of those actual projects, and where the homes are that are inside those various projects. And you sent this so that you can look at them. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but that includes even this Lakeview Heights and the first piece of James River Road, 56 headed down towards Shipman. When we're doing the Shipman side, we don't pick up the little piece coming back up that goes into Lakeview and Spring Hill and just outside Lovingston, and that project would be included in this next year. So, the question is, we can stay on a regular schedule. We'll get everything done by 2024. We'll do it as fast as we can. If we can do it before 2024, we will. But AEP doesn't have any plans to speed up their work, and we would have to wait until after they do their work in a couple of areas in the county. Down down Roseland Road and Dark Hollow, and in those areas, they have a project down from Shipman over towards Schuyler. They have a project. They have one up at Massey's Mill. Some of those would be places that would be a little further down the line. If we look at this, if you have the additional funds and are willing to commit them, we will pay for the extra poles we have to change out in those areas and get them all done next year. So that's my offer. I am glad to take questions.
Right. So, and thank you, Gary, so much for, again, helping pioneer our way through Nelson, and of course your support staff here today. And I think generally speaking that we are very much interested in seeing, a couple of years shaved off, relatively speaking, for most people. I guess obviously the question that we always have is, they see the fiber sitting in front of their house and drives them nuts, Installations, yeah.
Right, all right, so for the most part, well, first of all, the construction process to build fiber takes a while.
Sure.
Because you've got the AP trucks now, if you're on the AP side, they're gonna show up, do some work, and you think, okay, they must be putting the fiber up, and they're not. And then we come later and we put the fiber up, and then we leave, and then the splicers have to come back, and then the drop crews after that. The CARES projects were extended a little longer, and that was partly because we were making sure that we didn't delay the CDC connections. So in the CARES projects, because of the timing when they came on, we had some folks who, some of the contractors, subcontractors moved off of the job in early spring for a couple of different reasons. So in order to take up that labor shortage, we spent more time on CBC, and that spread out some of the CARES connections. We've actually added more crews now. We've got a full staff back. We're up to 24 overhead crews are building. We've got about 12 service connection crews. We've got additional underground crews beyond that. So we will get people on as soon as we can. There's a reason for that. For all the fiber we put up, we don't get a dime until we connect somebody and get to send them a bill. So the most important thing, and the thing that I jump up and down every week about, we have a weekly meeting at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays, I just finished doing my jumping this morning, is how many people did we get on, and what can we do to get more on faster? And we will, with this construction, we've already talked to AEP. I started to invite them here today. They have added personnel for their contract engineering folks so that they can move quicker. And they're committed to adding crews to their make-ready construction crews. They're using a large regional contractor who has multiple crews. One of the advantages of doing this next year is to get ahead of all the construction that's ready to go on in the state. So the state's gonna announce in December about $400 or $500 million worth of projects that they're gonna fund. We're hoping that we get part of that money. By next year, mid-year, those contracts are gonna start being signed and people are gonna start moving into those jobs. If we can get AEP in the first half of the year to do all of their make-ready work, that gets us ahead of those big projects. It also helps us a little bit. We have really good relationships, I'm not gonna live with our providers, material providers. We've not had significant shortages so far, nothing that we couldn't overcome. We hope that continues, but if it is going to show up, it's going to show up as all of this construction starts and things get a little tighter next year. So moving ahead of that a little bit is another advantage to decide to go early.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You said that all of the CARES projects are all complete.
They're complete as far as the construction. We still have connections, service drops, although we should have most of those service drops complete that I know of. And if you have some specific ones, I'll be glad to look at them. The ones that I know of that are out, we added a little extension up to Fleetwood off of 151. And I don't think we put the service drops in. There are 3 or 4 along there. I know we have a few others that have been added later, and I know we had a couple that had some unique issues because of either a road crossing that we had to get a separate permit for some things on Shady Lane. But I'll be glad to look at any of those that you know of, let me know, and we can look at. I was surprised the Shady Lane one showed up. We built Shady Lane first. Right. That was the connector out to the main road, and we connected a number of folks on Shady Lane, but we had to actually get permits to go underground across because AEP had some underground connections and things. And that held us up. Anytime we have to get a separate VDOT permit, it can add another 4 to 6 weeks easily, plus some coordination time.
I'll get with you.
All right.
Yeah. This is more of curiosity. When you say we, you know, as you actually do the work, or do you subcontract the work, or who's doing?
We use a team of subcontractors. So we have a separate group who does subcontracting for design. Their name is Connexon, and they're one of the larger fiber designers in the US and do a lot of work for electric co-op.
So the co-op isn't actually doing the work.
The co-op doesn't have a fiber designer, and it never has, and probably won't need one.
Well, just to run this by you, you know, I'm in favor of money for you. But I also am aware that, you know, this COVID thing has been a catastrophe for the country and is a serious problem. And the money that came from the federal government for that, I think was primary purpose was to help the people of the United States, you know, help the people of Nelson County. I would much more like to give you funds from our contingency funds or from general revenue because it's much more likely you get that money. You will get that money. And then that money that is within the CARES Act could be directed to the schools, to the people?
I'm really not asking for specific funding so much as just, this is what it costs. It can come from wherever. I'll leave that up to you and your excellent staff here who can decide where the funds come from. But I'd had a conversation, Steve would ask, as part of it, we had discussions because the American Rescue Plan funds can be used for broadband. They have a limited number of uses that are acceptable. And I told him that this would be the one place, because we've already got an agreement to do the project, and we will do it. But this would be able to accelerate that and get it all wrapped up on the AEP side by next year. But it can come from anywhere.
We have the question of timing. We have other requests for use of the funds, and actually some of which, you know, we have not received yet. They're in process of coming to us, and we have until 2026 to spend money. So what's the timing on this for us? I mean, are you giving us like a 3, 4, 5 month window to do this, or is this something that has to be done immediately to get this?
I think one of the things we can do is we can make the commitment for the money, and then we argue about which pot it's coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I still want to know what,
Yeah,
from you, what are the
To
timeframe
do the
requirements
amount
for
of
you?
work that we're looking at doing, we are pressed today. And so let me just say, the months just slide. That doesn't mean that we can't do this, but if you tell me in January, I want to do this, I'm going to tell you, okay, we're not going to finish in 2022, we're going to finish in February of 2023. And so it just slides out. And then the benefit at some point, if you wait till 2022 to tell me you're going to get done by 2024, I don't know whether it's as much benefit if you're at the end of 2022. So it's about a 15-month bill that we're trying to push down into 14 and compress. And we can do that, but if you need more time, you can take it. It just, maybe I shouldn't, instead of put this date up here, say that we'll get it done within 14 months from when you tell us. But I'll tell you, we have the availability of folks. Now, that's the other thing. If you wait till mid next year, again, you're going to be in.
Everybody's gonna be getting that money, and
Getting enrolled.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we could find the money, to, you know,
Yeah.
no matter what pot it comes out of.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mr. Wood?
Steve has his hand up.
Oh,
I don't have a question for Gary. but-
okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We may have more before then, so.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
thank you.
I'll be
Hold
back
tight
here.
over
Thank you.
there.
Thanks again for giving us time to present.
Thank you. Mr. Carter, do you have a comment?
I was just gonna agree with what Mr. Rutherford said, that the board endorses the funding today. You don't necessarily have to decide where the source of the funding is derived. It could be the American Rescue Plan funding, or it could be the general fund.
It's your job to find out where it comes from.
Yeah,
We'll spend it, you just find out where it's coming from.
Yeah. I think that would be a more proper way, and then we can talk about in future sessions about what to do with the ARPA versus the general fund. I think if there's no objection to that, what is that okay with you? We don't have to designate which pot? You don't care, great. Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion?
You may.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this proposal from Firefly as presented in an effort to see that deadline shrink down to the end of next year. So we'll keep that date up there since we're doing it right now. And the clock starts after the last vote. Right, Steve?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion before we bring it up for a vote? Okay.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
One quick request, Mr. Wood, our staff, in regards to installations, is there a way we could kind of get not a monthly update of how many installs happen in Nelson, but some level of that. That would be helpful as we discuss with our constituents.
I'm going to admit to you today, Galen will provide you.
I'll take care of it.
Once a month would be great.
Another thing is, you talked about getting calls. If we get a call, they say we got the stuff right outside the door, and we're not getting the service, who should they call to find out when it's coming?
We keep everything up to date online on our Firefly website.
Okay.
We also have a Facebook page. We try to keep just as up to date, and they can call Firefly. And I'll be glad to get that number. We put it on mailings when we do this. We mail when we first enter an area to tell people what to expect, the type of trucks are going to be in the area. When they're doing field engineering, those things, then we send another mailing when we tell them that we're going to be doing construction, and then another mailing to tell them that it's time to sign up. So we try to get our word out and our website out so that everybody knows who to look for. But yes, ultimately they can call me, and there's a lot of people in Nelson County who know my phone number.
Why, I just want to clarify what we just did. We just approved $1,380,000 to go to speed up the timeline for December 31st, 2022. Now, December 31st, 2022, does that mean that someone in North Fork is going to be streaming Netflix for New Year's Eve?
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody on North Fork will be streaming Netflix
And
in
in Woodson,
2022.
and on Jacks Hill, and in Bryant, and in Montebello.
Yes, AEP and CDC members, or AEP customers, CDC members will all have it. If you'd love, I can't guarantee. We're
I
gonna
got
try to
that.
get there, but yes.
We
the
test
rest
those
is-
150 people. I'm wanting to clarify that we're not gonna, on December 31st, 2022, have a black box across the road from them that they won't have hookup to until March of 2023. That's what I'm asking.
If we have people who are still being connected, we're gonna start connecting as early as we can. And these projects will come online, and we'll let you know each of those projects as we, put them out. If the last project, comes online in December, we may be connecting people still December and January, but, we will have everyone else connected, and we'll be getting those connected as fast as we can. Again, I'm trying to compress the schedule, so I won't necessarily say every single one will be connected at December 31st. All of the fiber will be in place, everything will be ready, and we're going to get all but a handful, maybe of connections. And I just want to leave a little room in there. I've got a year to deal with. I've got storms that show up, and this year, we lost crews to, go do storm restoration in Louisiana that slowed us down in August, when we had great weather up here. But even with those things, we're gonna get the major construction finished. We're gonna have people, particularly at North Fork and Jacks Hill. We'll make sure we have them.
Thank you, sir.
Jesse, maybe you can help me with this. Now, this did not come in front of the broadband authority. It
Correct.
came directly to us.
Correct.
What's the role of the broadband authority these days in terms of
So
moving forward?
our goal and intention is to help guide CVEC in terms of, and of course, the board also has some level of that authority in making sure that certain projects may be prioritized over others. A lot of that has to do with density, number of people. I mean, shoot, by the time we get around to the end of this year, I imagine the broadband authority will not have too much of a role. But I would like to see it until it's finished, and then it will have completed its purpose.
Okay.
Once it's done, then that'd be great. So I imagine a year, and then we can transfer the rest over to the county.
Okay, something else to look forward to.
I think another position that the broadband authority probably can have is in the event there are grants that, we can't solicit directly as a board or whatever that may be, the broadband authority is a good facet just in case.
Okay.
We only meet a couple times, so we ain't too worried.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay. That's the rest of our presentations. We're now moving on to new and unfinished business. First item is the Fleetwood Community Center funding request.
The board received Ms. Hernandez's input this afternoon, earlier this afternoon on this subject. The community center is requesting the board's consideration of funding the center $50,000, either in a match format, 1-for-1, or just an outright grant of $50,000. It's just a question for the board how you wish to proceed. Or any questions you may have for the representatives of the center. You know, we haven't reached out to them for any more information.
And I think you can decide that. We can just make the money available and then.
Well, I think the board should decide if you want them to match the funding that you would authorize, or, as I said, an outright grant of $50,000.
I think an outright grant is the way to go. We didn't do rock the ship way.
Right. Or the Heritage Center. Yeah.
Yeah. We just need to be consistent.
Certainly no objections from the staff.
Okay.
I would like to ask a question of Mr. Hernandez, actually. How do you feel if you wouldn't come up? And I agree, Mr. Harvey, I like the idea of making money available without any strings. However, do you feel that it would help your fundraising efforts if it were a match? Or do you just want to take the money and go? Because obviously it's available, but I wouldn't want to hinder your goal of raising the other 50 and being able to leverage this in your fundraising efforts.
Right, so what we noticed was even folks who don't have a lot of money were putting in what they could, knowing that it was gonna be doubled.
Sure.
So that was really why I was asking that you frame it that way, because our community really wants to contribute, but our community doesn't necessarily have big bucks. So them all knowing that whatever they put in would be doubled would be great.
Yeah.
I really feel like we could get to $100,000 if we did it with a dollar for dollar match.
I agree.
And then that way we can save the roof and stop the deterioration of the inside, which is hugely important.
Yeah.
I don't want to complicate this, but if it's 1-for-1, how do you want the staff to proceed? Do we hold the $50,000 or disperse it periodically based on the matching funds, or how do we do that?
Do you have any input on that?
Sure, I do. So the way the Nelson County Community Fund framed it was quarterly, you could submit how many funds you have raised, and then that amount would be matched.
Okay.
And do the up to.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to tie it. I mean, I'm trying to give them that money anyway, whether they match it or not, and just, but I understand that you want to do it in a way that the community doesn't think they've gotten a bunch of money.
Yeah, I say that we address that issue 12 months from now and give them 12 months to raise the money, and we revisit the subject after the 12 months.
The things that need to be done right away, and the roof being one of them, we need to make sure that we get the money available to let them do that right now. If they're having to wait on anything. You don't have an estimated cost, do you?
Well, we wanted to see if we could do some fundraising efforts, and then we would like to cast out an invitation for bids. And then also generate community engagement, how many people would be interested in doing things. Would the Nelson County Home Builders Association be able to donate a week of time? What kinds of ways we can work together?
Like that roof, you want a project, somebody to do that, be responsible. But we can have the money available so that you can get this roof done as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Carter,
I thought you were gonna make a motion.
I was getting ready to, I thought you were getting ready to say something before I did. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that we, yes.
Well, I'm rules. I just want to say that, the strength of Nelson County is community. And you've shown that. Anytime that gets shown and it just strengthens us. I thank you.
Where it strengthens the community.
Yes, it strengthens the community, strengthens our county.
Okay, Mr. Carter? Yes. I move that we allocate the $50,000 in matching funds for the Fleetwood Community Center earmarked for repairing the roof and other repairs needed.
Do you mind removing matching?
Thought we just
discussed.
Make,
We're gonna give the money anyway, so.
you can make the motion and we can have more discussion if we need to.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the motion as I made it, and we'll open it to discussion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're clear on the motion.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Harvey, did you want to?
Yeah, I just don't think it should be tied to anything. We're gonna give them that money and.
And like I said, and I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate the support of the facility, because that's something that was actually the very first phone call I received when I said I was running for board of supervisors was about that facility. So I appreciate the support. But I think it's important to get the community engaged. I'm not talking about the first 50. I'm talking about earning the second 50. And I think that it's important to frame it in a matching grant. They had a $30,000 matching grant opportunity with a 12-month timeline that they reached in 8 weeks. And that was an extra $10,000 that they were able to raise from the community and from sponsors. And I understand and appreciate you not wanting to tie their money up, but I think it's missing a potential opportunity to double their money.
I think we can give some level of assurance just that in the event that they need to make the repair on that roof in 3 months, that we'd be amicable to adjusting.
And there's also the possibility of, after all this is said and done, we can work with staff on how we may word the allocation of the funds and when it can be distributed. I'm sure that's something that Candy and Steve could work on, and we determine how those checks are written and when.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get done now, so that when they get ready, that they're ready to go.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we can take a vote.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Parr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Great.
So if I may, the staff would just work with the organization on the disbursements.
Now, do y'all need the county to help bid that for you, or? And we do have some expertise in bidding and.
I would love to have input on guidance. We do have someone who's interested in sponsoring a master plan. And I spoke with David about those that you all have used for repairing roofs and such for the county, and reaching out to them to see if they'd be interested in doing so. And then,
And it may be easy for the county to put it to bid for you, and
I think that would be great.
I would just suggest we could give them, provide the names of firms we can recommend, because if we bid it, county bids it, it's subject to low bid.
Yeah.
If they select from a menu of proposals, they can pick who they want, choose who they want.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, agreed.
And is there a relationship between these facilities, not just Fleetwood, but these facilities in the county and Parks and Rec? I mean, do they have a relationship between any kind of working relationship or availability?
Yeah, I'd have to ask Mr. West. I'm not sure we've been using the fields there at Fleetwood, but certainly we want to.
Yeah. It's an opportunity for the community.
Spent many years playing soccer on that field. And
kickball.
Yeah, there's a lot of rocks sliding on that field.
Mr. Hernandez, thank you very much. Okay. Next, we have the National Opioid Settlement Resolutions.
We have two resolutions for the board's consideration. Just very recently, county staff participated in a webinar on this subject that was sponsored by the Association of Counties, and representatives from the Attorney General's office were included. It was a Zoom meeting to overview this subject. The first resolution provides for the county's participation, memorandum of understanding that enables the county to participate in the settlement, opioid settlement. So that step one is to include the county in the national opioid settlement. And the second resolution provides for, actually, I have to read it, includes the county's participation in the settlement against the named firms in the resolution, named companies, McKesson, Cardinal Health, Verisources, Bergen, Janssen. So the first resolution says the county is part of the overall suit. The second says the county is a participant in the suit. And Virginia stands, as I recall, to receive about $560 million. The information we provided shows how the funds will be allocated. Localities in Virginia would directly receive 15% of the disbursement. Then there's 15% that will have strings attached that are allocated to the localities. There will be an opioid board created, or it's already created, that will administer the funding the state receives. The county is going to realize less than 1% of the settlement. We don't know exactly how much that is yet, but it could be tens of thousands of dollars. So this, and in the webinar that staff participated in, the state really wants all localities to join this suit, so it's to enable the state to realize the maximum amount of the settlement. So we strongly recommend the board to pass both R 2021-61 and I think 62. Yeah, we can certainly take questions. We included in the package the webinar that we participated in. It provides a pretty good overview of this, also better than I just presented this.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Carter?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve resolutions R 2021-61 and R 2021-62 as presented.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is the Nelson County Public Schools appropriations request.
Dr. Eagle, on there, and Mr. Elizabeth are also here and can assist with this. So Ms. McGarry and I met with Dr. Eagle this over yesterday and again this morning. What the schools are requesting is a local appropriation of $3,575,473 for two specific purposes. One is to replace the EPDM or rubberized roof that covers sections of the high school and middle school. And the second is to address this brick issue that the board has heard about previously, where an area of the original high school, the brick facade is moving away from the building and has the potential to fail, of course. The schools are proposing to utilize $2 million of their either American Rescue Plan funding or CARES Act funding to support the project. What is really being sought today is approval or a commitment from the board for this funding, however it's put together, the county side of the funding, to enable the schools to go forward with issuance of requests for proposals for architectural and engineering services to develop the design and specification for the roof and the brick project. What we discussed this morning after a conference meeting with Dr. Eagleman early yesterday was in the board's package, agenda package, is additional information about the school division's other CIP projects. And what we discussed with them today, and the board's going to hear this later in my report, is working towards incorporation of this overall project, the roof and the brickwork, in consideration of a renovation of the high school that seemingly is necessary. Ms. McGarry and I actually spoke to the school division's architect, both on the roof and the brick project, but we also journeyed into the school renovation, the high school renovation project. So what you'll hear later is we're going to propose that you have a planning session in early December to look at several capital projects the county staff are working on, but we'd like to incorporate the school renovation project into our work and see in December where all this sort of plays out. And I can answer questions about that. But in the interim, what's very important to the school division is the board's commitment to the $3,575,473 to enable this roof and brick facade work to move forward.
None of this new renovation or new building, whatever, is involved in any of the other areas where the roof is gonna be or the. I just wanna make sure that the roof that we're gonna do is not involved in any of the new stuff, so that we don't go in and redo the roof and then go in and do something over top of it.
Right, and that's a great question, and one that we've talked about also. So with a couple of the options that the committee with Mr. Carr, Mr. Weatherford, when the architect brought some of those options, and I know that Mr. Carter has shared those with you. As we look at that and look at the possibility of a long-term larger project for the high school, the roof and the brickwork would not be a part of that, unless you were to take on a larger project of a new high school building or a new wing. Still, what we have there and that we plan to use for years to come would be covered, and any of the renovation would happen inside, so it would not be a part of that. I think that what Mr. Carter is saying is that as we plan forward and possibility of meeting with, and talking further in December, is to look at how could this roof and brick project become part of a larger project.
Right, yeah, we, at least from our perspective, the staff's perspective, we think that it's certainly worthy of consideration and study. We spoke yesterday with staff from Davenport Company and the county's financial advisor. They're in a position to assist with funding strategies as we move forward in, with the county's capital projects, the business park and the recreation center, those projects. In a meeting last week, a project meeting last week, both consultants, the architect for the rec center and the engineers for the business park, said they will be finished the end of this week, early next week. And so we plan then to present that information to Davenport with financial information for the county to hopefully develop a strategy or strategies, options for the board to consider and it's being presented with the capital project outcomes, the study outcomes, and then financial strategies associated with them, so the board can decide, do you want to do something or nothing, or this one or that one. We think we could, certainly, we don't think we can include the school project on the high school renovation, and depending on how it can be done, the roof and the brickwork could be there, but it may have to be phased in per input that Mr. Irvin provided us earlier today.
Yes, as part of our challenge is with the $2 million that we want to give to the project and the timeline on that and the stipulation and restrictions to how that $2 million is used, which is what Mr. Carter is speaking to.
This roof has been on the radar for, I know, 10 years or better. And that's something I think we need to do and do it immediately.
Well, it won't be done immediately for the information we understand, but what the division needs is the approval for this to go forward. Their timeline doesn't say it will be built in 6 months.
And the bricks getting ready to fall off the side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a dangerous situation.
Well, even if you build and that's an inside addition, it's still gotta be done.
Right.
And what the staff, if I may say, I don't mean to interrupt, is what we want to look at is, as with the Firefly proposition, is just a specific outlay of $3 to $5.2 million, because they're also going to come back later with the request to have reappropriated last year's school fund balance. But we want to look at this in a financing strategy rather than just a total cash outlay. That could be a better way to move forward with these things. And potentially do, 1, 2, 3 projects at once.
Does the timeline, if we follow staff advice on this, does the timeline, is it detrimental to you in any way, or is that?
Well, yeah, so I think what Mr. Carter is asking is for consensus or
Yes.
commitment from you all that no matter where it fits, whether it's a smaller individual project on our own, to use our 2 million plus whatever, the county can get to it within the timeline that we have in the next couple of years, so that we can use the CARES money, or fits into a larger project, yes, we are fine.
Okay.
We've got to spend this money within the next couple of years, and so we need to go ahead and have the A&E report put in, and we have to deliver it to DOE. DOE has to approve it, give it back, and start. So that's the crunch right now as to why we want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, and this allows you to go ahead and get
Yes.
started. Okay. Okay, do we have a motion?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the requested funds from the school division in the amount of $3,575,473 for the purpose of moving forward with roof replacement and brick remediation projects as presented.
Second.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Steve?
Okay, good. The motion being amended, said the board is committed to that funding.
Ms. Clark?
Motion stands amended.
Okay,
I amend my second.
okay, thank you, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
And just as a side note, to keep it in perspective, every year that project gets put off, it increases in price by about $175,000. So it's something that needs to get done.
I would also like to say thank you to Dr. Eagle and Mr. Irvin for being very helpful with us the last couple of days.
Next we have the After Mountain Renaissance Project letter of support.
Oh, you missed redistricting.
Oh, I forgot. Sorry, Susan. Redistricting update and resolution. Almost.
Almost. I see you. You still trying.
And while Rachel's doing that, we're going to show the board a timeline for this redistricting and how it sort of plays out. And then there's, you are aware, a resolution authorizing the board's conduct of a public hearing on the local redistricting.
Can we adjust it a little bit?
Zoom in.
I'm sorry.
Can we focus it a little bit?
It's pretty focused. Rachel, can you zoom in?
I think you also have a copy of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here.
Get a copy.
It is.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe a little bit back and forth in here, and I'll defer to Ms. Rohr, of course, but The staff is ready and the board's representatives have met with county staff on the overall redistricting plan. I think, subject to discussion, the board is comfortable with what's been proposed and presented. And we have that information that I think can be put up on the screen again. What we're really seeking today is the board's approval to move forward with the process to formally approve the local redistricting plan for, as an outcome of the 2020 census. What has to happen is a 45-day period for public comment, and then within that window is, I think, a 30-day period we can, maybe she can say that.
45 days prior to the end of a 30-day public comment period, we have to advertise on our website and in other media locations that the public comment period, when the public comment period will be open. So, the timeline that we came up with, kind of starts today, November the 9th. Early next week, we would start that 45-day period with posting something on the website. And then you can follow the timeline down for you when the 30-day comment period would be, when a public hearing would occur, et cetera.
Yeah, so you can have the public hearing at the December meeting, but not enact the local ordinance until the January or February, just to, maintain the compliance with state law. So subject to questions or review again of the redistricting map and the percentages of population for each district, which we can show again, I think. The consideration is just approval of resolution R 2021-63 to move the board to public hearing.
Do we want to show the map? You just throw it up there real quick.
And I will say, the map that you see here is the map that the only changes from the 2011 map are the changes that in the meeting with Mr. Rutherford and Mr. Reed, we agreed to, which involves moving 120 citizens in the Woods Mill subdivision area from the central district into the east district.
Correct. And the boundaries that were being used is 29 and the Rockfish River.
Yes.
So that's a solid boundary, and
There's another change of it. Well, I lost some people, and where's that at?
There shouldn't be any changes.
no, you lost 250 people, but you didn't leave the percentage threshold.
If
If the people move from my district, your district, I always want to know where it's at.
we didn't move any, the only changes we made to the election district boundaries this year was the one change, kind of in the Davis Creek to,
Well, not Davis Creek, you mean.
kind of along 29 along Davis Creek down to the intersection of 6 and 151. It kind of involves that geographical area and move some people on the south side of 29.
Well, how do I decrease in number without losing any people?
So you
Population movement.
you decreased in your overall number, but see, we have a 5% variance that each, right?
I understand all that. But to me, if I'm losing people, there should be a line difference.
You say you get a certain amount of population, and the population went down, but that had to do with the census, not that to do with boundaries.
Sure, yes, that's correct. The boundary didn't change anything
Right.
for you.
We didn't change the boundary. Are you talking about a change from the 2011?
Just get it.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, and, just like Mr. Rutherford pointed out, we are within the 5% or less deviation required for the districts to conform.
all right, I'll do it again. Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass the redistricting update, R 2021-63, as presented by staff.
Second.
Yeah, it's to go to public hearing.
To go to public hearing, excuse me. And then 4 other things.
any discussion?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Okay. The Afton Mountain Renaissance Project letters.
So for the record, because I've gotten several emails, it's not the same Renaissance project in Nellysport, so that everyone knows. Who picked the same name twice on the same road? Yeah,
It's not.
it's not.
This is an initiative of Augusta County. They're seeking federal economic development administration funding. We understand it's $500,000 to look at the top of Afton Mountain. Point of reference is the end of Afton, that property, to do a master plan of redevelopment of that site, including potentially a regional visitor center. The owners of the property have given their consent for the county to move forward with its application, and if the funding is approved to study, they haven't committed to anything beyond that. But Augustus reached out to our staff and asked for a letter of support because, of course, that area of the top of Afton is sort of split between Augusta and Nelson. So we would certainly want to participate, however, directly or indirectly in the study if it's funded. And the letter, I think, is just written to, in support of the application. We can take questions. It's basically a master plan initiative by Augusta County to look at the top area of Afton Mountain, particularly that east side where the hotel facility, old Howard Johnson's, several smaller buildings are there in a plan of redevelopment.
Interesting. So they actually did meet with Delaney.
They did.
Wow.
We talked to the Delaney's to confirm all that.
Really?
We spoke to them, of course, excuse me.
Were they, they're kind of interested?
As I said, they are willing for the study to go forward if it's, the funding's approved, but they're not committed to anything
Transaction yet.
at this point.
Okay. That's a start.
So we weren't sure that we should just go ahead and send a letter on behalf of the county without the board's review and endorsement.
Mr. Harvey, do you have any?
Tom, do you have any comments on it? Questions? Okay.
We could just do a consensus, Mr. Reed. General.
Consent, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine with us.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Let's make sure we have consensus. Is there any objection to having consensus? No, okay.
Good.
Very good. Mr. Carter, don't go away. It's time for your report.
So I handed the report out just prior to the board's meeting. Step through the update of the coronavirus in the county fairly quickly. Over the past several weeks, we've seen almost a straight line in the incidence of cases of the virus. As of yesterday, there were 5 new cases and a 7-day average in the county of 2 new cases. As I said, over the past several days, that trend line has been 1 case, 2 cases, 5 cases, 1 case, whatever. So it's almost over the last 30 days. It's not a straight line because there's a couple blips where we've seen, I think at the end of October, there were 13 daily cases. But the trend line for the county from the Department of Health's website is almost becoming a straight line. And it's continuing to be below 5 cases per day, which is really encouraging. And I've reported on the cumulative cases, which have increased over time. The number of hospitalizations pretty much remained stable. There are, I think, 56 persons hospitalized as of Monday, and that's cumulatively over the period, the report period. So that was an increase of 8 from last month. And there have been 18 deaths attributed to the virus over the last year plus, or approximately that, which from last month, that was unfortunately an increase of 4 deaths. The county is still an area of high transmission, as is the Commonwealth, which the Center for Disease Control still recommends that everyone wear a mask indoors, but as we've reported, there's an honor system here for the county facilities, where we encourage people who have been vaccinated to wear masks, but we don't ask those questions. Additionally, as the board may be aware, we just received the federal regulation that's been drafted by OSHA. As an outcome of President Biden's, I guess, mandate, which, as I understand it, he couldn't issue an executive order, but they've gone through OSHA to issue a regulation mandating that employers with more than 100 or more employees require their employees to be vaccinated or tested weekly. That would pertain, it doesn't pertain to the county. We have fewer than 100 employees because the county attorney's opinion is that the employees of the constitutional officers are employees of that office. And with that interpretation, we're below the threshold. So that's, I think, good news. The sort of bad news about that is OSHA and the current administration are considering lowering the threshold to anything below 100. So still to be determined. And there's now one of the federal courts is I guess a suit filed by one or more of the states. It's set this the regulations, it's stayed for now, subject to a hearing. So that's where we are with the virus. The general reassessment I checked for 2022 with Mr. Ains of Wampler Ains earlier today. They plan to send their reassessment notices out to everyone on November 19th, and then they will start their assessor hearings on December 6th. And then by the end of the year, they'll make their full report to the board on the results of the 2022 general reassessment, but that will be effective in 2022. And my office and Andy and I are working on the advertisement for the Board of Equalization. If the board has any recommendations for that board, we certainly welcome those, of course. The comprehensive plan, we did receive the 5th of November last week, 3 proposals. The firms were the Berkeley Group from out of Bridgewater, Hill Studio from Roanoke, and Summit Design and Engineering Services from Richmond. So we anticipated those 3 proposals and glad to receive them, of course. Next step is an interview process, interview and selection, and then reaching a contract with the selected firm. So that's about to get in process, of course. So as far as current county initiatives, what I've suggested to the board, I mentioned this earlier, is with the recreation project, that study, the business park study, and hopefully now the consideration of the high school renovation. The county's consultants, Timmons and Architecture Partners, have indicated their work will be finished this week, early next week. We've spoken with Davenport, who we work with for financial advisement. So we think we can bring all this together if the board would be willing and amenable to a meeting in early December to receive these study outcomes, to look at potential plans of finance of any of these projects, individually, collectively, or none at all, and then move forward from there. So we're getting pretty well positioned to move forward, and we would like to get this in front of the board, as I've indicated, as soon as possible, with strategies for you to decide, so that then we can move forward after the first year. We can take questions about that. And lastly, debating whether or not this could be a closed session, I didn't think it could. My office has received concern from one or more of the constitutional officers about the levels of compensation of their staffs. So I agreed to bring that to the board. I think one or more of the board members have probably been apprised of this by one or more officers as well. I just want to remind the board, salaries of the officers and employees of the compensation board are not set by the county, they're set by the state compensation board. The county, since 2006, has supplemented those salaries annually with any changes in compensation for county. It's always been equalized since 2006, such that if the board approved a 3% increase for county staff, and the state's at 0 or 2%, the constitutional officer and their employees will receive that 3% was granted to the county. That's how it's been working since 2006. And you heard the legislative program earlier. There is a provision in there under public safety that encourages the state to take a look at this. Will they? That's a good question. I've included in this report that there's, as of 2020, the state has changed minimum wage laws in Virginia, and it's graduated to 2026. As of January 1st of 2026, it has to be $15 per hour minimum wage. And after January 1st, 2027, the law says that that $15 will be adjusted by the annual change in the Federal Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers. So it won't stay stagnant after 2027. It's going to be annually adjusted in relation to the federal minimum wage, whichever is higher. So what I'm proposing here, if the board has concern or wants to address compensation levels for constitutional officer employees, I think the best way to proceed is to do a pay study that looks at all of this. The $15 per hour wage, because that will impact our staff as well. We have some people who are below. As of January, the wage level will go from $9.50 an hour to $11 an hour. So we're going to have to make an adjustment for that after the first year with a few of our employees, but and then it'll graduate to 2026 to $50 an hour. So I agreed with the constitutional officer who presented his concern to me to present this to the board. But if you want to do that and look at their wages, I think the best way to do that is hire a consultant and look at it professionally. When we did the study for county staff, which didn't include constitutional officers 5 or 6 years ago, it took about 2 years for us to do it because of time constraints. And then it was to be phased in, and only 2 of those 3 phases were ever approved. So we're 6 years later, and we never really completed the study.
Pays are different then.
Yeah.
Didn't we do an in-house for the sheriff's office?
Well, I didn't mention that. And within the last year or so, that concern was brought to the board, and the compensation levels for sheriff's deputies were changed.
Yeah, I remember we did that several years ago.
With county funding.
Right. You know, I think obviously support staff of our constitutional officers are a very critical piece of our county, of course. And as we mentioned before about the comp board's participation in that and state support, I think it's important that we put pressure on them. And I'm sure the sheriff would be able, as well as any other constitutional officer, to write a letter and put pressure on our state legislators. And I hope this board will do that as well.
That's one of the things I encourage the officer who came to my office to report this concern, that each of the constitutional officers has a state association, and they should strongly encourage their associations to lobby the General Assembly to address this.
I think, and it's a twofold. So of course we need to do that. We need to put the pressure on our state legislators, and we still need to support our staff. So I think we can do both. Put pressure on them, and if comp board comes up and helps step in some, then that's less than we have to fill in the gap. So
yeah, if we did it in-house, I think it would be difficult to complete it timely and probably more arbitrary than if the board's amenable to an outside firm who specializes in this work.
Certainly.
It just depends on the level of your concern about wages and particularly at this point, the wages of employees of the constitutional offices.
I'm curious, does the TJPDC legislative agenda include anything along these
You
lines?
know, I wish we'd have said something to
Yeah,
David while we were talking.
I mentioned that earlier. It does under the public safety section. David made reference to that. I was gonna make a point of that when he was speaking, but I looked at it and it's sufficient. I wish it was a little bit more in bold, so I'm gonna reach out to him and ask him maybe to put that area in bold.
And what we could
He
do,
definitely makes reference to that the salary or compensation for constitutional office employees should be addressed.
sure. And what we could do is use David as a avenue to
He's our
deliver some of this
legislative
to our legislators.
liaison.
Yeah, to our liaisons, so.
But otherwise, there's no guarantees. The state will have to address their own $15 an hour requirement. And not just in 3 years or 4 years now, because if they have anyone below $11 come January 1st, they'll have to make adjustments, because that's the law.
The problem was the constitutional officers, like positions with the counties, do not match.
Sure.
The county pays more than what the constitutional officers saying positions are having. We control that, and you don't have to ask anybody but us, but that's where the question come up.
It takes longer for those employees, they would have to move from whatever the initial classification is that the state system provides for to a higher classification. Some of that involves training and certification before they can move or receive higher compensation. The county has a salary classification system that doesn't include those officers. They are subject to the state's classification system.
A lot of these employees have made advancements and stuff, but not as a compensation.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I'll just note, the board has actually, when the state failed to provide salary adjustments when, I'll use this example of the treasurer's office, when one or more of their employees have certified for work related to the treasurer's office. If the state didn't fund that, the counties stepped up and did it. They increased.
It still goes back to the equalizing the county employees versus the compensation board.
Well, I don't want to sound like I disagree. You'll never be able to make it equal because everything's different. It just depends on how it's classified and what the salary ranges are. And as I said, the difference right now is the county has its own classification system, and the constitutional officers and their employees are subject to the state's classification system. Albemarle and Charlottesville, for example, have combined those into one classification system, so you could potentially do that.
So what action do we need? Do we need to authorize you to begin the salary pay scale?
Well, if the board is open to this
Study.
and you're willing to allow the staff to recruit a consultant to do this, we would issue requests for proposals, interview responding firms, contract, and then move forward with the study.
So if we were to have a study and then we have results from the study, what are the benefits for us in terms of what we would be accomplishing from the results of that study?
You will spend more money.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer. You're likely going to have to provide more funding because they're going to look at market rates comparatively within our region, potentially in the state, and then potentially nationally. And then come back with recommendations and for implementation.
And I don't think we're that far off. I believe we could go in and do some adjusting and probably accomplish the same thing instead of having to try to redo the whole thing.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of offices, but we have some.
Well, there's 5 offices and probably, if you include the sheriff's, 30 or more employees. not including the officers.
A study gives you at least something to kind of go by, and then we can adjust it from there. It just helps, gives you a concrete, this is what the region's doing, and then we can adjust it from there.
Yeah, or do something or do nothing.
Right. All right, so
Is this something, do you think we need to move on immediately, or, I mean, obviously, we can say yes or no to getting a consultant. But,
I think it's.
do you think there's time value in this?
I think it pertains to if the board has a definite concern about the compensation levels of those employees.
I don't think it is an immediate problem, but it's something that doesn't need to be from that problem.
Right. I mean, you can see what happens as an outcome of the next general assembly session, if they address something or not, and go from there. I mean, it's not an immediate crisis. This, you know, one officer came to me and expressed concern about it.
Sure.
And said that they had spoken with another officer who supported, you know, higher salaries for their staffs. I mean, I understand that.
Well, we're not on the verge of losing a bunch of employees because of our pay scale.
and we ain't gonna be able to fix it for
Yeah,
several months
so
anyway.
it's-
Why don't we go ahead and just outreach to a couple consultants and get a time frame and a cost of when they could get something resolved for us and report back to us in December. That way we have that, and that'll give, and in the interim, let's go ahead and write that letter to the comp board and our state legislators. Does that sound good? And try to circulate that with the other constitutional offices.
Of course.
Is that okay, Ernie?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think the big concern and the immediate concern is the fact that we've got an office that's typically staffed with 4 individuals who is entering the busiest time of their year with 2 people. And that's the biggest concern right now. I wish there was a way that somehow, and in the inability to find qualified candidates to fill the vacancy. But I wish there was a way we could, that there was, I know a temp agency can't fill that specific need, but I wish there was some way of helping out that office through this.
My understanding is that all the counties are in the same boat.
That they've
And the
they've
pool,
lost 50% of their staff during the.
that staffing is difficult for them, and there's not a lot of pool out there.
Well, staffing is difficult for everyone.
Right.
For everybody.
Right now, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But,
We might be able to help with that. We'd have to discuss it, since we sort of helped with that problem.
that was kind of getting to that point. It would be nice if we could offer something to get through just this 6-8 week period. You know.
Yeah, well, Ms. McGarry received an email from the treasurer asking if they're gonna have vacancy savings because of that vacant position, if they could use those savings towards overtime, if they need to work overtime. We certainly wouldn't have any objection to that, of course.
They're already working overtime.
Maybe we could send some of our extra staff down there.
Oh, okay. Skip, did you volunteer?
You know, I'm thinking through this whole thing that, one of the things that concerns a lot of people in the county is that the, people who are employed by the county don't represent the broad spectrum of the county. And it seems to me, you know, this idea that we need employees should be, you know, publicized as much as possible and give these people opportunities to get a job.
Well, when the county has a vacancy, we do have we do cast a very broad net to try to recruit people. It's not just one advertisement in a local newspaper. There are multiple advertisements throughout the region, plus on our website. And we do, as I've reported to at least one board member, in a recent employment decision in my office, it came down to, does the person live in Nelson County or not? And the person who was hired lives in Nelson County.
I mean, it is an advantage to live in the county and work in the county, you know.
It's tough.
Pay doesn't always make up for that, but.
Right.
All right.
So I just brought a question and concern of one of the officers, maybe 2 of the officers to the board, as I agreed to do. You know, to depends on how you want to move forward. Or just, as Mr. Rutherford suggests, we can do that, bring it back.
Yeah. So let's circulate the letter and then bring it back in December with some inquiries.
And see what we could do to help out that office in the short term.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, before you, are you done, Mr. Carter? Were we gonna make, a decision on D, the, proposed planning session? Did we want to talk about it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would
We need
like
to pick a date.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, what we discussed with the consultants was December 7th or 9th, which is a Tuesday or Thursday, if the board has, you know, your calendars are available then.
Why?
Okay.
It's mini Friday, so let's have it on Tuesday.
We want to do it on a Tuesday?
I'd rather do it on a Tuesday than a Thursday.
All right.
But I'm open both days.
December
I don't care. 7th or the 9th, I'm open.
7, good for me.
December 7th.
7th.
Tom?
Good.
Okay.
Did you mean the
Continue this meeting to.
What time?
Maybe we should just do a special call so we can
Yeah.
put the time down with the consultants.
Yes.
Because they offered the 7th or the 9th. It can probably be early morning if the board's.
Yeah.
I'm flexible both days, I can do either one.
I am too. There was also, is there some discussion about having someone from the schools there as well?
Yeah,
From the school
potentially.
division? Yeah.
We'll have to plan it out. What I sort of envision is presentations on the projects, including cost estimates. That can include the schools, as I've suggested. And then we would have Davenport and county staff present whatever strategies,
Okay.
financing strategies associated with that. And then it would be for the board to determine next steps, if any.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have something Thursday
Thursday what?
of this week?
That's a holiday.
Veterans Day.
I got something, I don't know what it is.
So we're looking at December 7th? Okay.
And we'll just put a call out, if that's okay,
Yeah, morning and afternoon?
probably.
Okay.
We'd have lunch and everything for the board.
So we haven't picked, did we pick a date?
7th.
7th, for sure, we don't know the
Yeah.
time. Okay, I'll just put the whole day.
Yeah, thank you for putting that back.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Park.
Yes.
Okay, we are at board reports.
What point,
We were in closed session.
Ernie, what
Yes.
point are we gonna talk about these directives?
Directives?
Or, what are they called?
Appointments?
Initiatives.
At the retreat,
The retreat,
the 7th.
that was the purpose of the retreat, is that we can talk about it at that time.
Can we make comments on some of these initiatives at this time?
In the direct, or
Yeah,
for the business.
yeah, when it's your,
Closed session.
Why don't we do that?
do you want to go to closed session now, as a recommendation, and then do the reports later? Why don't we do the reports first, because we've got the public here,
Sure.
instead of having them leave and come back? So, board reports, Mr. Barton?
You know, it's interesting, you know, the opioids, it's very hard for me to say. You know, social service department continues, you know, to be in crisis, and in terms of problems with people in our county. And we just need to recognize that, you know, the police are aware of that, you know, that things are not easy for everybody. It's a difficult thing, and we have to make resources available to them. far as an appointment is concerned, there is, Claudia Koba wrote that she was interested. What's the process of?
We have to get to do that in appointments.
Yeah, directives is,
Okay.
I mean, appointments is
You
second.
know, they were concerned about that. About whether that person we discussed was eligible. They felt strongly he was, but that's fine. Moving on. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Harvey? Mr. Rutherford?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's probably a good idea. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll start out with, we had, me and David had a 2x2 with Amherst, kind of talking about the ag facility. Obviously, things are still up in the air on several different pieces of that, ranging from potential cost all the way to feasibility to several other different items. So we'll keep the board apprised as that continues. But there's some concerns in there at this point. So just FYI to the board, we'll probably have more details in the coming, I'd say, several weeks. So, and Steve might have what?
We are starting that study.
Right.
Should we keep going?
At some point, the board needs to sit down and discuss this stuff and
Yeah.
decide what they want to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were hoping to bring up on the 7th. Let's kind of get into that. At this time, I would say call up Dean if you got a chance and talk with him a little bit, and he'll go through some of those details.
They seem, I mean, from the feeling I got from the meeting, they seemed 100% committed to the project.
Yeah.
They're concerned that we might not be.
Right.
And they're hoping that once we have this study done, that'll help reinforce the commitment from Nelson.
Right.
But they realize that we aren't committed as a board at this point. So they're hopeful that the study will reinforce that, or will prove to all of us that it's not something to pursue. But,
Sure.
But they do, and they reiterated their intent for everything to be shared equally, not that they gain anything over Nelson. They've been adamant about that. And so
yeah,
they're in full support.
Yeah.
They're just worried. We're not.
Okay. That's nervous, but that onto the TJPDC. Really exciting things coming down with regional housing partnership. I'm going to be speaking on the rural caucus. So I hope some of y'all can tune in. We'll be kind of talking about rural housing across Virginia, the needs, talking about kind of some of the history of it, from corporate housing from the early 1900s in our county's industrial kind of corporate housing, all the way to, manufactured housing to today's subdivision, developments. So we on touching some of that as it relates to the water authority. I leave that for Ernie. So he's got something, and that's all I got for the moment that I can think of. Good. I do have a directive.
Okay.
When we get to that.
Okay, Mr. Carr, do you have anything else?
Emergency services doesn't meet until later this month.
Okay, in terms of reports, both Planning Commission and Service Authority have the results of our meeting in today's agenda, so we don't need to go back into those things. Did want to make mention that the Virginia Association of Counties conference is coming up this weekend. I'm on two committees. I'm on the Environment and Agriculture Committee, and I'm hoping to get on the Education Committee. So looking at those two things to be involved with there, along with getting along with county administrators and supervisors and staff from around the Virginia counties. But that's all I have on that. Now we have appointments.
In reading one of your initiatives having to do with the business park and the recreation center, from reading this, I think the most important part of all this recreation is a place in which the people of Nelson County can recreate with their children, grandparents. I think this, from what I see, underestimates the importance of the people of Nelson County, and I see in having a summer, an area that people can get together in the summer as a community, continue to know each other, enjoy the water, enjoy their children, and that should not be something mentioned in the end, but a priority. And I think most of the people in Nelson County agree with that,
Hey,
that
Skip,
I've talked to.
this is where you make the motion for Claudia to get on the service, or onto the social services.
Well,
Yeah, but point made, point taken.
Thank you.
I think that's important. I think that's what the
Sure.
people of Nelson County want.
Agreed.
The scope
And
was.
you
to-
agree, you agree?
I said we went, we're all in it.
The scope of the project was to look at options, including a major facility with an option being an outdoor pool. We are pursuing all those options.
Mr.
And-
Chairman,
and
point
if I
of
may-
order,
if
Mr.
I
Chairman,
may.
we're on appointments right now. We haven't gotten to directives yet. We're still on the agenda section for the social services board.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
excuse me,
I-
Yes, we haven't gotten that far yet. We need to appoint.
I only opened that up.
Make your motion for Claudia.
All right, I make a motion to appoint Claudia Cola,
Claudia Vancova.
social service.
Okay,
Second
motion, we have a second.
for Claudia Vancova.
Any discussion?
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Okay, after appointments, we'll do correspondence. Mr. Parr, do you have any
I
correspondence?
do not.
Mr. Rutherford?
I'll save it up for the evening.
Okay. Mr. Harvey?
No, sir.
Mr. Barton? Okay. Directives, Mr. Carr?
I have no directives.
The only directive I have is related to the cigarette tax board. As further thought has gone into it, I believe that at this time that we probably don't need to participate in terms of the cost and all that. I would like to potentially just table the topic of putting the cost per carton, that public hearing tonight, just table it, and then send a letter to the board removing us. We will be able to return to that board if at any given time, so we're not binding anybody in the future. But at this time, I just don't see much.
I think it's really out of order to do a directive when we have a public hearing scheduled for this evening.
Oh, I'm just saying we can also remove the public hearing.
But it is scheduled and the public, it's been announced and the public is intending to be there. Whether there are people commenting on it or not, I can't say. But we should definitely have their input before you pass a directive like that. That's my opinion.
I'm just giving my take of where we were, trying to make it efficient if we have to.
Okay. That's your intention at the end of the public
Got
hearing,
it.
we will take it up.
That's fine. I'm done.
Okay. Harvey? Mr. Martin? Okay. And I have none either. So, do we have any other business to take up this time?
I have a question. I would oppose the cigarette tax because it's a progressive tax, but that doesn't stop us from being able to participate in some other sort of taxes.
No, this is very specific to just that. So the exit of that would not impact anything
So
else.
the precedent that allows us to tax this locality.
Correct. You will, and we'll still have the authority in the future if we ever chose to participate.
And we are in receipt of a letter from our county attorney about suggestions for revenues. So
Sure.
we got that as well.
Closed session.
So if there's no other business, we can move into closed session.
How long do we have before you want to jump into closed session, Mr. Chairman?
I think we have enough time.
After?
Yes.
Good.
It is after 4 o'clock.
Right.